show you guys something really quick. Oh wait, new version. Not sure how I turn the camera around. Oh wait, there it is. Look at these dudes. These squirrels are coming up. Holy cow, this is like a tax squirrel. I got no food for you. I got nothing. What are you doing? We're talking cost per mile. We're not talking nuts. You're a pretty brave little fella. Your buddies. Hey man, good morning. I just was gonna look to park somewhere really quick to have this conversation, and just randomly pulled in here. There's these squirrels are everywhere. Squirrels are. Look at these dudes here. This guy's coming back. This is his buddy. The people must like come and feed him. I got nothing for you. Or you guys. I mean, they're everywhere. There's like a freaking dozen of them. For those of you guys that are goose hunters, this would be a good spot. All right, I want to talk briefly about some cost per mile. If you have spent any time on some of these trucking Facebook forums, you'll know that that's been a really hot topic this past week. And I thought I would spend a few minutes and let's explain it. I want to explain it because on one of these forums, I think it was the first one I saw this week, the question was asked. The question was asked, simply, what's your cost per mile? And there were 300. When I looked at it, there were 311 comments, and people's cost per mile, in their opinion, ranged from a low of 19 cents a mile to operate their truck, as high as like $3.50 a mile. Okay, and then sort of just everywhere in between. I saw a lot in the $70s and 80s. I saw a lot in the 70 some odd cent, right, 60s and 70 cent range. Hey, good morning. Hey, really quick, audio okay? Having any issues with audio? I'm just doing this off the phone. Yeah, man, it would be funny if that little guy jumped in. There's a couple of them that are pretty brave. Clearly I would think that people are coming and feeding them. Anyways, perfecto, good. All right, so I have a really tough time. So let's talk about cost per mile. Cost per mile, and let's talk about actually why is this such a topic right now? Well, it's such a topic right now because in the past year and a half, nobody really had to worry about it because they were turning a profit. Why? Because the rates were so high. Jump in the truck, shut the door, start shifting gears, you're gonna make money. You're gonna make profit. Guys didn't have to worry about that, right? If you follow this channel at all, you've heard me say countless times, hey, while you're making money right now, back when the rates were really good, carve out a little bit of that money and spend it creating a cost per mile spreadsheet, or paying someone to do that, so that when times are really tough and you need to know, you are prepared. You're not behind the 8 ball. Predicated on a lot of the answers that I read, I don't think a lot of people took that advice, which, whatever. I mean, that's fine. It's their business. Let's talk about these individuals that suggest that their cost per mile is in the 60s or 70 cents. Probably the only way that could happen is if you have equipment that is paid for. I still don't know how that could really happen, because if you're gonna drive 100,000 miles a year and you're gonna pay yourself, say, 65 grand, well, your cost per mile is at least 65 cents. Once you start factoring in fuel on top of that, fuel is probably going to be an average of around 40 cents, something like that, for the year. Maybe a little bit less if fuel is running lower for that year. Maybe a little bit more if it's running higher. I'm assuming you're going to have some insurance in there. So already, if your salary is 65 cents and your fuel is 40 cents, we're already above $1. And so I don't know how people could be running at a 60 or 70 cents unless they are not factoring in paying themselves a salary, which is a really, really, really poor way to sort of run that business. So here's what a lot of people have to say negative about cost per mile. Oh, cost per mile, man, don't do that. Don't know what your costs are to run your business 1 mile, because that is clearly. All right, so this little squirrel is like, I can't zoom in. He's eating an icicle, which seems odd. I wouldn't have expected that. Sort of like I wouldn't expect some people to sort of make this argument with cost per mile. They said cost per mile is, it's just it's what's happened in the past, right? It doesn't tell you anything about the future of your business. Cost per mile is telling you how much it cost your truck to run however many miles you ran this year, and sort of comparing that to your costs. So you're just looking at historical data, and who wants to look at historical data? For those that sort of say it doesn't make any sense to look back in history to determine to run your business, let me ask you a couple things. January 1st, 2018. So what was that, 380-ish days ago? How much did you weigh? How much did you weigh? Were you one of these individuals that said on January 1st, 2018, I weigh whatever, 250 pounds, and I want to weigh 220 pounds by January 1st of next year? And then, oh, by the way, when you look at January, when you look 365 days later, how much did you weigh then? Did you weigh more or did you weigh less? For those that weighed more, that's sort of my argument to cost per mile. It's really difficult when you start looking forward in the business to accurately predict what's going to happen. Now, relative to your weight, you have complete control over your weight, right? You sort of have complete control of what you put into your stinking pie hole, and how much we exercise, or all that sort of stuff, how much we end up weighing. We have complete control over that. In trucking, we don't have a lot of control over whether or not our truck is going to break down next week, next month. We don't have much control over the cost of fuel, right? We don't have control over what the rates are going to be. We have so little control over our business. It's really dangerous to try to predict on how many miles you're going to run. That's the argument, right? With the cost per day situation is, well, look, and what's interesting about cost per day is a lot of these guys will say, look, I ran this many days last year, so I'm going to run this many days this year, right? That was sort of a good number of days. You can sort of say the same thing about mileage, but that's where it gets really sketchy, is you're trying to predict what's going to happen in the future. There's a reason that we have that saying, you know, the past is a really good predictor of the future. It's sort of like, you know, when you guys are driving in rural America and you go over some bridge and there's a sign that says this is called Copperhead Creek. Well, why is it called Copperhead Creek? Because if you want to go find copperheads, that's probably a really good place to go. Cost per mile, cost per day, kind of the same thing. Now, for those of you guys that are owner-operators that are running really, really short mileage for the year, you do need to understand what your cost per day is, because that's going to be a piece of that. Because when we look at rates on the load board, it's a situation where we look at rates and we sort of say, this is a 1,200 mile run, for example. Right, and let's say that you drive an average of 600 miles a day. So this should be about a 2-day run predicated on those pick and delivery times. Okay, so you can't just look at the mileage. I think that's where a lot of people miss when I talk about cost per mile, is they assume that we're just solely looking at mileage. And that's not the case. We factor in all the components. So when I'm on the load board and I call a broker and they say, hey, this is gonna pick on Monday, and it's going to deliver whatever, you know, Tuesday night, okay, and it's 1,100 miles. Okay, well, you know, maybe we can make that run, right? If it picks early, we don't get crazy long load times, we can do that. If they tell me that it's going to be an 1,100 mile run, it's going to pick at 0600 on Monday, but it's not going to deliver until, you know, whatever, the evening of Wednesday, then we can certainly get that run there easy, right? But now we're averaging far less mileage per day, and that's maybe not such a good deal if they give me a rate that should be sort of a 2-day rate. Does that make sense? So your pick times and your drop times play a really big factor, as does your cost per mile. So, you know, I'm one that advocates you looking at both of those, right? The biggest mistake I think some individuals make is they don't pay attention to those pick and delivery times. There's a tremendous advantage of being able to deliver in the morning, because you can get that load off of your truck and you can pick and have another load on your truck sometime later that afternoon, that evening, right? You can manage your hours better. You can manage parking. You can make a few miles. You're turning that truck quicker. The dumbest thing that you can do is schedule a delivery for whatever, a Monday, and then wait until a Tuesday to get loaded. And because here's why. If you wait until Tuesday to get delivered, even if it's, say, whatever, a 10 a.m. appointment, by the time you get loaded, get your paperwork, get all squared away, I mean, what is it, 1 o'clock in the afternoon before you're making any miles? You wasted just almost an entire drive cycle, 24 hours if you were unloaded the day before, the morning before. Right? So that idea of I'm going to wait and be patient is just, that will hurt your business dramatically. It really will. It'll hurt your mileage too. Mileage by I mean the total number of miles that you could drive in a year, right? Or in a week, or however long it is that you choose to be out running away from your family. Right? When you make that decision to start that truck and leave family, you want to make the most amount of money that you can for that compressed amount of time. Again, whether that's a few days or a few months. You want to maximize the time that you're spent out there. You want to minimize your cost. Right? So we talk about minimizing costs. We talk about, hey, be safe, get your insurance the cheapest as you can get it. Manage where you fuel. Right? All those sorts of things. How fast you drive. All those sorts of things. Manage that cost. But you also want to be maximizing the revenue. And getting, the morning appointments are really key to maximizing your revenue. I'll tell you right now, as I've booked, I don't know, whatever I've booked, 30, 40 loads or so in the past 2 weeks. I don't know, whatever it's been. Maybe it's less than that, maybe it's more. Every time I get an appointment that's sort of like in the afternoon, I know if our guy has a likelihood of being able to capture that load in the morning, I ask, hey, can we load early? And a lot of times they'll say, well, it's first come, first serve. Okay, fine. But I'm talking about for whenever we get appointments. Hey, it's a 2 p.m. appointment. Is there any chance that we can make that into an 0800 appointment? Well, yeah, sure. I can do that. That's fine. So versus just sitting around at a truck stop or sitting there idling, spending money, let's get loaded and let's make a few hundred miles that day. Let's turn revenue. So looking at the ways that you can put more revenue on that truck for the period of time that you're out is a good thing. And when you look at cost per mile, that's historically what you've done, right? And that's a pretty accurate predictor for the amount of cost that it is per mile to run your truck, to operate your truck. So it's just a really dangerous thing to start trying to predict what's going to happen, because a lot of us fail at that. Whether it's because we didn't diet correctly, or we didn't eat correctly, or we were always on the run, so we chose to eat, McDonald's, raising my hand right here. Whatever it may be, it's really hard for us to predict it. I mean, for example, we have a truck right now. I was just receiving some text from a driver. Truck was in the shop for about a week or so. And guess what? We're a week out. We're a week out after the truck was in the shop, and we're still having DPF issues, right? So he's going through a forced regen right now. We'll see how all that plays out. But the truck was down for a week. I didn't predict that, and I'll tell you this. I heard this on this guy's YouTube video one time. He made the comment. He's like, he spent like whatever. He spent like $10,000 or whatever it was getting his truck repaired. And he literally said this. I kid you not. He said, and I sort of quote, he said, look, I just spent like 10 grand. I'm not going to need to spend much time in the shop anymore to have my truck fixed. Really? Like, who can say that in this industry? I mean, we've all seen on YouTube, we've seen individuals who get a brand new truck, and that thing has got problems out of the gate, right? If we look at Matt Isso's Volvo from whatever it was 2 years ago, I mean, that truck was a problem from the get-go. We've seen other individuals that buy used trucks with no warranty, and that thing runs like a champ for years with just some simple maintenance. So that's the problem, is we can't predict. I certainly would not have predicted that if we have the truck, we shut the truck down for a week and we stick it in the shop, right? While the driver goes and grabs some vacation time, I wouldn't have thought that a week later we're going to have to sit and have DPF issues again. It's tough to predict that. So there is no best answer. Well, that's not true. I think there is a best answer, but there's no 100% accurate answer relative to how to track your costs. Okay. But I'll tell you that cost per mile, I think, is going to be a far more accurate way when you blend that in and have an understanding of how time impacts your business and the amount of revenue that you can put on the truck. We've seen firsthand when you widen the time that between you getting empty and loaded, we've seen firsthand a massive loss of miles as well as associated revenue to the truck. So it's a situation where that can happen. So be careful there, right? Be really careful. Another thing that will have a really big impact on your profitability, for example, for a lot of you guys that are running Reefer, right? Look, when you get into a bad area, occasionally, one of the advantages of running Reefer is you can also look for some dry van freight. So if you get into an area where there's really crappy amount or volumes of Reefer freight, you can also look at some dry van. Maybe there's a lot more options within your search area or your search criteria where you can do that. For those of you guys that are using a dispatch service, be really cautious, right? A lot of times what you'll see is if you're the minority, meaning if you're running Reefer, or if someone is paid more, if your dispatching service is paid more by someone else to run, say, dry van, they may be focusing primarily on dry van. And so when it comes time for you to get some better rates running Reefer, you might end up with a lot of dry van freight, and that's going to damage your revenue as well. So for those of you guys that are using dispatch services, understand that if you're negotiating a really aggressive rate, you might be cutting your nose off, right? Because if they have other companies or other drivers that are paying them more, who are they more apt to be focusing on finding runs for first, right? They're going to be focused on whoever's paying them more, or on the side, or whatever it may be. So use caution with that, right? Use caution, because that can hurt your revenues a lot. Just a lot of factors you guys need to understand. And I understand why cost per mile is now such a big topic, because all of a sudden rates are poor, or worse, I guess is what I should say, in a lot of areas. A lot of guys are struggling. A lot of guys have no clue what their costs are. But the rates now are so close to what their costs are, they're sort of wondering, is this a profitable run for me or not? And they don't know. And they don't know because they haven't taken the time to track that cost per mile. And now when rates change, they're scrambling and they're behind the 8 ball. Guys, knowing your cost per mile and tracking that data is no different than maintaining your truck or your trailer. When you wait until it's too late, those breakdowns can cost you a lot more. Not knowing your cost per mile and now having to sort of have somebody track it, or you take the time to figure out how to track it or how to create the spreadsheets or that sort of thing, you could be losing money for the next week or two while you're trying to figure it out. It's just like maintenance for your truck. Keep it up to date and keep it current. It's not hard. It literally will take you, once you get the spreadsheet or you pay someone to get the spreadsheet operational, it will take you hardly no time at all. I mean, it will take you 2 minutes, not even 2 minutes. It may take you 2 minutes if you have to open your laptop, open Excel, find your document, click on it, which is probably saved on your desktop, and enter in a few things. Here's something else for those of you guys that are already doing this. I would really encourage you to add just a couple of columns with the broker's name, meaning like the brokerage, whatever, ABC Logistics, right? Then put, hey, I worked with whatever, who was the broker? The broker was whatever, trucking exec. And here's their phone number. Because you know what's really sexy is when you've taken a lot of consistent rate, you can do a sort, right? I can do a sort over the past year. And I can just do a sort on my rate per mile. What's rate per mile? Well, what was the rate that I was paid per mile? Was it $2 per mile? Did I get paid $3 per mile on that run? What was it? I can do just a quick right click and sort and see what brokers and what loads paid me the most. if you did a good job for them, you added value, you do a lot of those little things that we talk about. And as you guys all know, most brokerages will rate you. They'll keep sort of a preferred vendor list. I'm going to call that broker, right? ABC Logistics. I hope there's not an ABC Logistics out there. Whoever, right? ABC XYZ Logistics. And you got your phone number right there. You don't have to go back and search through bills or old paperwork, or, man, just put it right there. It's just a quick search. So there's a tremendous amount of value in that. So the past is a really good predictor of sort of what's going to happen in the future, unless you start changing things drastically, right? Maybe your cost per mile tells you that you need to make some significant changes. Maybe it tells you that you're doing a hell of a good job, right? So it's really valuable. You know, we all learn from our past, right? And that's what sort of cost per mile allows us to do, right? It tells you, hey, do I need to change dispatching services? Do I need to start running in different lanes, right? I mean, we were really fortunate, you know, the past couple of weeks, because we were able to get some really good miles and some tremendously good revenue at a point in time when the rest of the market was really, really struggling. And we did that because we sort of track a lot of data and we look at a lot of data, right? And we were able to capture better revenue and better miles for our drivers than we have in quite a while. And some of that, guys, I'll be honest with you, as I've told our drivers, some of it was lucky. It was because I was up until 2, 3 in the morning just looking at the load board, trying to find a circle, right, or a triangle. And I was able to do that, and I took a really big risk, candidly, knowing that rates are going to be changing here soon. And I sent the vast majorities of our trucks into that area. And we found a couple of good brokers that were paying us well. They've continued to pay us well. So when we talk about adding value, guys, this past week, right, rates plummeted, but the brokers saw value in our drivers. As I've mentioned in the last few videos, they've sent emails and text messages saying, man, anytime you guys want to offer us, give me a call. And so they were continuing to give me the same good rate that we've seen the past couple of weeks, this past week when rates dropped significantly. Because they knew we were good and they didn't have to worry about us. They were willing to just kind of pass along a really good rate. And man, we were happy to take it, right? We were happy to take it. So cost per mile allows you to track everything from brokerages to your cost to where you're fueling at. I mean, you can see who you're spending most of your fuel with, right? You can ask for, you know, some greater discounts. There's a lot of things that data will allow you to do if you track it and if you use it. But if you don't use it, it's useless. So it's kind of my 2 cents on cost per mile and the timing or cost per day, right? Once you sort of have all this data, you can easily figure out your cost per mile. You can also sort of figure out your cost per day. So if you're taking a run that's a 150-mile run, right? You see, and we saw in the past couple of weeks where some of these runs in some of these areas were paying, you know, $1,200, $1,500 for a 300-mile run. This past week or week and a half, some of those exact same runs are now paying $400. Well, are you losing money if you take a 100-mile run on $400? Man, if it costs you $500 a day to operate your truck between your fixed costs and your variable costs, I mean, look, your variable costs are going to be significantly lower, but those fixed costs aren't going to change. And so if your fixed costs are $500 a day and you're consistently taking what you perceive to be a $4 a mile run, well, that's a great rate. And that rate may be far above your cost per mile, but it may be way below your cost per day. And so that's the argument, and that's why there's value in seeing all of this data and having both of these numbers. There's a tremendous value in doing that. I don't know if that helps or not. But again, there's been a lot of conversation about cost per mile. And again, if you're an owner-operator or a lease operator, you really need to understand both of those components, right? Because they're going to play a really key role in that, right? So if you're someone that's running 80 to 100,000 miles plus, you know, man, and you're taking longer runs, that's where cost per mile is going to be a really key contributor to the value for you being profitable. Oh, by the way, when you get into an area that has these really great paying, you know, or shorter runs, you can then easily determine which way is the right way to go. So let me it's bright out. Try to answer a couple questions, and I'll let you guys get out of here. That's right, Eric. It does work both ways. You're right, man. Detention. Yeah, absolutely. Detention plays a key role in that too. And who was it that said that? Eric. You know, when you track detention, track that as a separate line item, because there's a lot of brokers will go to bat for you and help you out for detention, and a lot won't. Right? So if you have two loads coming out of an area that are sort of similar, and you know that one brokerage rarely pays you detention for when bad things happen, that's going to play a role in that. It's going to play a role in that two ways. One, maybe you don't want to take that run, right? Or maybe you do want to take that run because when all things are considered, you're willing to take the risk because it pays a lot better. But then maybe you need to know, for this particular run or this particular broker, I want to go ahead and make sure that I put some language in on this contract, even if it's for just one run, that you can sneak the language in there that protects you for whatever it is you want, $50 an hour, 100, 100, whatever it is you want for detention and layover. Right? All that data you can keep, and it takes you just a couple of minutes to input it. And it's insanely valuable, right? It's insanely valuable. Joe Harding, speak of the devil, not that you're the devil, but you're the person I was talking to about regen and that truck being down. So, yeah. How's it going, Jonathan? When do I think rates will pick back up, Super Trucker? So, again, if we look at the past as a predictor of the future, we typically see rates start to improve the first part of April. Typically by April 15th, we see rates really trending up, right? Really trending up. So, I mentioned this a couple times, Super Trucker. When you look at January 1st to December 31st, we, running Reefer, primarily tend to see rates being really, really strong the first 2 to 3 weeks of January. That last week or so of January up until April, right? So think about that. We've got all of February and all of March that are pretty soft rates, right? So that's 8 to 10 weeks of, you know, not particularly great rates. April, May, June, the first couple of weeks of July, we see some of our best rates and some of our best freight volumes. Once you get into the back half of July, right, past the July 4th holiday, you'll see rates take a really significant tumble. The last couple of weeks of July, August, and early September, sometimes all September. So when you sort of break it all down, and then you sort of, you know, October, November, some of December, you have a little bit of this, but on average, the rates are better, right? We have holidays and all that sort of stuff to kind of make a big spike. When you break it all out, you're sort of, I mean, big round numbers, we're sort of, you know, 6 months of good rates, 6 months of not so good rates. Maybe it's 7 months of good rates, right? That sort of thing. But a lot of it also depends on where you're hauling. Right? We talked about this some before. Right? A lot of guys are going to be getting a lot better rates up in the Northeast. Well, as you should. Right here, this past few days. Let me explain this too. When I look at trying to be as profitable as we can, I had a driver yesterday that dropped in Cincinnati. He only had about 15 hours left on his clock. I found a broker that said, hey, here's a run that goes to the back over to the Northwest. That was 20, I forgot what it was, 2,100 miles or something like that. Driver only had 15, 20 hours left on their 70. There's clearly no way that we can make that, even when we looked at recaps. But it was paying a really, really good rate. Now, I guess, so what do we do? What a lot of guys do, they go, well, I don't have the recaps. I'm going to go ahead and get my reset in. That's not what we did. We went and grabbed that load. It was a deadhead of 25 miles paying, I forgot what it was paying. It was paying really, really good. Well above $2 a mile. I want to say it was like $2.30 a mile. Guess what? Here's what I knew. I knew that the driver couldn't make it. There's no way that driver's going to be able to make it. Who wants to turn down $2.40 a mile on 2,000 miles this time of year? Nobody. You know what other thing I knew? I knew that driver was going to be driving right into a ridiculous storm. So I talked to the driver and I said, hey, here's what we got. We got to run for really good miles. oh, by the way, you're going to need a reset. This storm is going to force a reset. So instead of sitting there and getting a reset yesterday and today, and guess what? That storm is going to hit him today around Cincinnati, Chicago area. He made a few hundred miles yesterday with a load that pays really well. He's going to get a reset underneath that load. By the time that storm blows through, his reset's going to be ready to go. He's already made a few hundred miles. A lot of people sit there and say, well, no, we can't do that. Or even worse, they say, man, we're going to dodge this storm. We're going to capture those 15 hours. We're going to run down to Georgia or the Carolinas where the rates are paying $1.20, $1.30. That's a way worse decision to do that, in my opinion. So we deadheaded 25 miles. A driver had just a few hours left on his 14. He grabbed it, was able to get situated, made some miles today. He's going to shut down. He's going to get his reset while that storm blows over, and we got a really good load on our trailer. So we're capturing money while we're getting a reset in. That's a good thing, right? So in essence, we saved those 15 hours of deadhead. Yeah, man, exactly right. Default aggressive. So I use poker as an analogy a lot. If you've ever played against a professional poker player in a tournament, you will notice one. I mean, let's just take all the other sort of the fact that these guys understand the math and the odds insanely better than the average, even good amateur poker player. The one thing that you will see that is insanely different when you play with a professional poker player is they are insanely aggressive. It is going to cost you a lot of money to see cards, to try to improve your hand. And these guys know that. And they know that you're a little bit tentative more often than not. Oh, by the way, they're using this aggressive attitude as well as a lot of the data that they have in their head against you and to their advantage. All I'm suggesting is that you guys do the exact same thing when it comes to trucking, right? When you can take advantage of, I mean, look, everybody's been talking about how bad this storm is, and don't get me wrong, we've had other drivers that have been caught up in it, and it's not been particularly good. It's hurt us a little bit. But in this particular case, we're taking advantage of, right? Turn the negative into a positive. That's what we're talking about. So how you guys think about certain things, you know, I think a lot of guys would have taken a run down south, or even worse, deadheaded down southeast, right? Not a good spot for reefers right now. Scared money doesn't make money. Man, Jonathan Bearden, you're right. If you've gambled, I'll tell the story. I'll never forget, I was sitting at a poker table. I was waiting for a better table to come open. And there was a guy sitting, I was in seat 2 and he was in seat 8. He hit his wife or his significant girlfriend with him. I always like to see that, because by and large, those guys are always going to want to try to impress their significant other and how good of a poker player they are. And so you sort of wait until you have the nuts, which is the best hand. And it's really tough for them to fold because, you know, just the ego, they just don't want to allow it. It turns out I had the nuts kind of the whole way, actually, as it played out. And the guy put everything in, as it turns out. And after that fact, he gets up and goes to the ATM and comes back, and that was it. And he says to me, literally, I went to go get a Dr. Pepper. He literally says to me, "Hey, that was our rent money. Is there any chance that I could get some of that back?" That was him just playing with I mean, look, if that was your rent money, that's usually not the way to go. You can see it so often, though, when people start to get short chip stack, they get really, really tight. They get really tight. They get really scared. That's why knowing all this data, knowing what your cost per day is, knowing what your cost per mile is, knowing the freight rates around the area, where the good freight is, where you need to be, where you need to position your trucks, take some homework, right? A lot of guys want to spend time, you know, YouTube or whatever, doing other stuff that maybe is not benefiting their business. And watching YouTube drama is not going to be benefiting your business. It's not. It's my opinion. Cost per mile equals broke. Man, if your cost per mile equals broke, that's bad, right? That's bad. In your opinion, as a company driver, what do you suggest working at a fixed rate of 60 cents per mile, a secure rate, a better bet than accepting 30% based on, oh, I see. So you're asking me which is sort of better to take 60 cents per mile or 30%? Well, I can't really answer that until we understand what that freight rate is, what the miles is, how long you're out. Look, it depends is the answer, and I can't answer it any better than that. Right? If it's a really good rate, awesome. If you've secured that rate for a year, and you're going to be running in times like this, and you're going to get a good rate. Well, a good rate is probably better on percentage. But if you're sort of running the spot market, it could be sketchy, right? On percentage, you have to have the swings. You're going to have the most important thing you're going to have to do when making that decision is how well can you budget your personal finances. I'll tell you this is by and large, I'm not gonna say most. There's a lot of truck drivers that are really poor at budgeting, right? Whether that's for their business or personally. So, learning to be better at budgeting is a good thing, just like whether it's a diet or eating healthy or that sort of stuff. Trucker Daddy says just came in. I thought you were talking about cents per mile. Well, sorry, I gotta roll this window down and burn it up. So we're sort of talking cents per mile. We're talking cost per mile versus cost per day. Not really versus, but the value and understanding both is what we're really discussing. For a lease operator or an owner operator, you really want to understand, both. How messy is that four-wheeler? If my driver treated his equipment that way, that's funny, Pigtail. Right. If you're talking about all these boxes back here, we went and picked up a bunch of jackets. Kirsten's company, we'll talk about, listen, she works in a financial firm. There's what was we picked up? I forgot how many, I think it was like $12,000 worth of jackets. And why, hey buddy. They're going on a ski trip to Vail or Aspen here in like a week or two. And so the company went and bought the, there's like $12,000 worth of jackets back there. Let's see, these are really good decisions and strategies, but nobody is perfect. Absolutely not. I'd like to hear about some of the awful moves. Oh man, I got plenty of those to talk about. I'm trying to think of a couple that comes to mind. So here just the other day, we sent a driver down to a run from Phoenix to Yuma, 181 mile deadhead. Driver gets down there and gives them the pickup number. Pickup number had already been used. Okay. So called the broker, and they said, yeah, we'll give you guys some layover, some detention for that. Okay, great. This was on, I think it was Sunday. No, this was Tuesday night, I believe it was. So it was late Tuesday night. No, none of the brokers were open. So the next morning, I found a load out of Nogales that paid really, really well. Going, I forgot where it was headed to. A couple thousand miles, I want to say. So I made the decision to deadhead. Now, mind you, I've already deadheaded 180 miles. I made the decision because the money was in there to deadhead 300 miles to Nogales. Okay, now a lot of my profit is beginning to shrink. But there's still some profit in this run. Driver gets over there to Nogales, checks in, ready to pick up on Tuesday afternoon. We now have 480 miles of deadhead in on 2 days. The driver texts me something about the load of produce that was coming across the border was held up due to cartel issues. I don't exactly know what cartel issues is. What I do know is now if that truck has to sit for another day, we've got to pay that driver to sit. Now we're basically at break even. All right, so now I'm about to take this run at break even, unless I can get money for layover to help in this situation. And they're going to help some, But quite frankly, you know, the standard $250, $300 doesn't help much, right? So what I thought was going to be a horrible decision, again, that's me. That's an example of looking into the future, right? So, you know, a couple bad decisions. Now, in this particular case, the driver ended up doing some just awesome stuff, managing their clock really well, and they're going to get us. They're going to basically buy us a day because they are managing their clock well. They're communicating with shippers and receivers on this particular one. It's a 2 or 3 stopper, so they're helping close some of that gap. And so the driver basically is going to save us a day because they're doing, you know, just really good rock star kind of stuff of helping us along the way on this run, right? So there's a perfect example of, you know, of a situation. Now, the only way that situation could have been made worse is if we had not negotiated really well on the front end on both of these runs to try to get as much out of the you know, the freight rate as we could. So prima donna strikes again. Yeah, that's funny. Look, I'll mention this really quick, only because it's funny, and a lot of you guys are going to go, "Oh my gosh, look, there's Scott goes again bashing on his drivers." And we had a laugh about it. So when I say we, there was 3 or 4 drivers on the phone calling me, and we have a driver that has not quite 2 years experience, and this driver will tell you guys, when I interviewed him, I told him I didn't want to hire him. I told him there's just something I didn't like about him. I was brutally honest about him. I just wasn't sure. He's turned out to be a phenomenal. I mean, he's done a lot of great work, and I don't want to look. He's already got a big head, so I really don't want to say too many good things about him. But he's done a really good job for us. He's in one of our Volvo 780s, and those trucks are spec'd out really nicely, right? Inverters, they got TV hookups and microwaves, and they got the table and blah blah blah, right? Surprisingly, some DPF issues the other day. So we're on full maintenance leases. We called the company, and they shut the truck down in Billings, Montana, and they give my driver a Freightliner, 10-speed, no fridge. Now here's the funny part. So whatever morning it was, the night before we were dealing with this issue overnight, like 1 or 2 in the morning or whatever it was. He was calling me, telling me that we're gonna have some issues. We tried to solve it, right? First thing early that next morning, it just didn't work out. They're gonna need the truck for an extended period of time. And the driver was telling me, man, about his, he's gonna have to move his, you know, his electronics and radio and this and that and his food, right? And the driver, you can tell he's really perturbed. And the second he made the comment about food, I didn't hear anything else he said for like the next 2 minutes, because I'm sitting there wondering, like, this guy's only got, you know, not quite 2 years experience. And what he doesn't realize is this rental truck that they're going to put him in, the chances of it having a fridge that he can save his food is going to be like, it's just not going to happen. We all know this. So the driver calls that next day. He's like, he is so aggravated. He's like, they're going to put me in a Freightliner. It's a 2013. It's a 10-speed. There is no fridge. There's no this. There's no that. And I'm going to have to track my IFTA stuff on paper. And so I was like, man, you're acting like a prima donna. There's probably a million truck drivers out there that are right now driving that same truck, and they're happy to have it. So not too long after that, he kind of owned it. He was like, well, yeah, I guess this is part of the experience of trucking that I sort of wanted to get. So we made fun of him. We were calling him a prima donna. But I really hope that we can get that truck fixed, because the frustrating thing about that is I don't want my driver. I mean, we'll compensate him for the food that he lost and that sort of stuff. But I really don't. I mean, look, we're still paying for a 780 that's sitting in a shop in Billings. You know, I'm not paying. I mean, I'm paying for a 780 that's kind of got some nice amenities in it. I'm not paying for our drivers to be stuck in a Freightliner. If I'm going to pay for that, I want our guys to get the value of it. So that's another situation. But Jonathan, thank you for bringing that up. I saw you mention that a time or two. I know you wanted me to mention that. Are the tolls included in the rates? So it depends. Who was that? Benny? I see what you're asking. So when we run Northeast, we have a software that kind of tells us what the tolls are going to be. So when we run that, we have an idea of what those tolls are going to be. Um, if freight is jumping off the board, so let me answer it this way. Typically, yes, right? The tolls are not added into the fact afterwards. It's not like a lumper fee that you're going to turn a receipt in and they're going to reimburse you. So you need to know if you're going to be running Northeast, you know, you're going to get hammered with some pretty big tolls. If you're running into New York or Long Island, you got to go across the. I mean, anybody know what's the rate going across the GW now? Isn't it like $100 or $150 one way? I mean, it's something really insane. So, I mean, you could easily lose your profit um, uh, on some of these runs if you don't know what the tolls are. All right, Harding, you got your region in, so you're good. Yeah, this will upload. What is that? Truckle all day. Yeah, this will upload. We're just kind of going through some Q&A stuff now. The first probably 15 minutes is we're just talking. Well, the first couple of minutes I'm talking about squirrels out here. So skip through the first 3 minutes and then just go ahead and get to the heart of it. How to prepare for tow bills? Good question. You know, if you are a lease operator, owner operator, I would really encourage you. Look, you know, if you talk to people that you know, everybody knows a few people that are wealthy. By wealthy, I'll call wealthy over 10 or 15 million dollars of net worth, right? A positive net worth. If you talk to those individuals, what they're going to tell you is they found, and if you break it down, they may not look at it like this, look at it totally like this, but if you really look at, they're probably going to carve out 30. They're going to pay their taxes, right? And and then right after they sort of set money aside for taxes, they're going to set money aside, probably 30 to 40% of their income to put it away, whether that's savings or they're going to invest it in something pretty safe, right? And then they're going to live on a small amount. They're going to live on a small amount. And they're going to do that for many years, right? These are the people that you look at that are driving, you know, older cars or pickups or that sort of stuff that aren't rolling around in Mercedes or you know, high-end sports cars. You would never know maybe that they have a lot of money. It's because they have a goal, they have a plan, right? And so I think sort of the same thing, right? You need to start carving out money that you're going to set aside, whether that's for tolls or for maintenance. And I would tell you, right, I mean, probably an industry standard average is, you know, for a new truck that's under 2 years old, people are probably carving out 10 cents a mile. If you've got an older truck, I would tell you at a minimum, you need to be carving out 12 to 15 cents. If you can carve out more and force yourself to live on less, it's a good thing. Save that money, right? Because, you know, what we can all rest assured is in this industry, whether we buy the brand new sexiest truck you can find, all right, or one that's a couple years old, I'm telling you, you know for a fact that you're going to experience a noticeable breakdown. Tow would be a part of that as well. All right, so carve all that out. All your expenses are going to go into your cost per mile, all right? So carve out money and save for that. Bill for skiing team. There's some snow on the ground. All right, let's show you guys where I'm at. There's some snow on the ground. The squirrels have sort of gone. They're up in this tree. There is one, if you guys can see him right there, sitting on that branch. So we just sort of have the ski team. All right, let's a couple more questions, and I'll give you guys the rest of your day back. These are some really good decisions. And oh yeah, you wanted to talk about some of the bad decisions. There's plenty of it. Mr. What is that? CXT Scott, I appreciate all the time, effort you put into your data tracking and sharing your knowledge. It's great. You're welcome, man. Checking in from damn near Mexico. Yeah, we've been there, Bearden. You're there right now. Yes. Let's see. Was that Michael? You're asking about towing coverage on insurance. Absolutely right. Pay attention to that. There was a driver that there was an outside carrier that we used last year. And I think he was telling me an experience, if I recall correctly. I'm probably going to butcher this. I think one of his insurance on the first lease op truck he had, I don't believe his insurance covered towing. So he made sure that the next one did. So man, when you guys are looking at those details, especially when you're look, insurance is going to be somewhere. I mean, if you guys get a smoking deal, you're probably going to be around 14, 15 grand a year. If you get one that's maybe more standard, you're looking in the low 20s. I've seen some guys paying almost $30,000 a year for insurance. So make certain that you've got some good coverage in there. Oh, Mr. 60, yes, I recommend people watch you. You're a true patron of the industry. Try to be. Look, we're trying to do the same thing everybody else do. We're trying to run trucks around this country. Our drivers, I mean, are just like the rest of you guys. You're the backbone of this country, whether people want to admit that or not. They want to own that or not. That's true. And so we're just trying to get guys good miles, and we're trying to be profitable. So many companies in this industry almost behave as non-profits, and that can be ugly. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate. Yeah, the old people have to feed these squirrels because, I mean, they're like flocking to the car. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate that. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Only the lonely. How's it going? Greg Inman is in here. What you saying? Nice to change your mindset, cents per mile instead of cents. Yeah, right. $105 to go across the GW for 5 axles. That's pricey. How's the lease purchase going? You know what? So I talked about that the other day with one of our drivers. We were having this conversation. So I get that question often. What's up, buddy? You gonna be on camera? Hang on. Where's he at? No, he's gone. He's right over there now. So lease out versus buying a couple-year-old truck. For us, the greenhouse is a low margin industry. And so being able to manage our cash flow is critical. A full minutes lease allowed us to pay a little bit more every month and not to have to worry about a $10,000 bill, right? So we're gonna end up paying more, but we're gonna pay more every month. So it's gonna be smaller increments, so it's not gonna hit us quite as bad. If you buy a 2-year-old truck, you know, you're taking the calculated risk. Again, you're taking that risk for any truck, but what you're risking is you're going to have lower payments, as long as you don't spend that payments on, you know, chrome and fancy this and fancy that and you know, nonsense, and you set that money aside for the rainy day, or the breakdown, or the tow bill, or the turbo, or you know, whatever it may be. You know, that's a good thing. I recommend always, guys, that if you're going to get into the lease up game and you're going to get a 2-year-old truck, you know, try to go into it with a savings of 15 to 20 grand, right? Because it's not just about the breakdown, right? Average probably breakdown bill for a noticeable or a sizable breakdown is probably somewhere in that 5, 6, 7 grand. The problem is you still got to pay all your fixed expenses out of that too, and you're not running, right? And you know, if you're married, you got kids, they probably still want to be able to go to the grocery store and eat, right? Pay the cable bill, Wi-Fi, all that sort of jazz. So that's why I say that, right? If you're gonna make that hedge. If it were me, if I had $15,000 to $20,000, as I look at the data, I would probably go and trying to find the best 2-year-old truck that I can find, get a warranty, and take my chances that way. That's probably what I would do, right? Because the other thing is, once you buy that brand new truck, right, smells good, looks nice, all that sort of stuff, if I'm gonna be running hard 100,000 miles a year, at the end of that 5-year lease, that truck is gonna have 500 to 600,000 miles on it, 450 to 600,000 miles. A lot of the maintenance issues are gonna be popping up during that time frame. And then when it comes time, if I wanna buy that truck, I mean, the residual on that's gonna be somewhere between probably $50,000 to $75,000. Right, now that includes the markup for the dealer, right? It's up to you to go and negotiate a better deal. Is it worth it at that point? Oh man, I don't know. Probably not. So that's sort of my 2 cents. It's up to you guys, depending on how you want to do. I also think, you know, your situation, your cash flow, where you're going to run, the amount of freight, all that sort of plays into that, right? But if it were me, I'd probably go and buy a 2-year-old truck. That's what I would do. I would not buy a new one. Like I said, there is a nice, the full maintenance lease does offer a nice kind of a safety net. The way I look at it is you sort of need to look a long term, and you need to sort of say, am I going to be in this for 10 years, right? And if you are, or longer, if you are, man, to me, if I've got 15 or 20 grand, I'm hoping that that used truck is going to be paid off in about 3.5 years. And I'm going to have another 2 or 3 years of running that truck, putting maintenance into it, of course, and my profitability is going to be significantly better. At that point, if I want to decide to go buy a new truck, I can put a higher amount down, have a little bit lower payments, or at least, or if I want to keep my payments the same, that's fine. I've got money in the bank, you know, and that's truthfully probably what I would do is, you know, pay less down and just pay more per month. I would look at the interest rates accordingly based on what my money is making by having it in savings versus having to pay it a little higher interest rate on the truck with a lower down payment. So that's kind of how I would look at those things. Little Viking, that's funny. Can we be our own broker? Yes, we can. We actually, so we don't post our, so that's not true. So when we post, so the answer to your question is yes, we could. And in a way we sort of are, and I'll explain how we sort of are. So we do occasionally post some of our freight on the load boards, but we go through a broker to do that. 3 years ago, we posted a high percentage of loads there. Howard and his team have done a phenomenal job over the past 2 years. Last year, I think we posted less than 10 loads on the load board. I think is what it was. Maybe it was none. Maybe 2 years ago it was less than 10 or something like that, and last year it was none. The way that we offset that is we find lease operators or owner operators that want to come and work for us for, you know, 4 to kind of 6-8 weeks at a time, right? And so we just sort of own that truck, if you will. We'll dispatch them. And we are ensuring that they're getting good revenue per week is how we manage that. Right? We understand that we can't have, I mean, look, if we come in and we hang whatever, $3,000 a week on a guy, they're not going to come back, right? And so we understand that. We understand the game really well, or we think we do. And so we make sure that the lease ops or the owner ops that are going to come in to work for us are going to get good revenue for that week. They may not get good miles, but they don't care about that. Right, they care about the revenue as a lease op or owner op. So we try to manage that and make sure that happens. The whole, I don't know if that's true or not. I can't confirm or deny. You're putting down 20K on a $110,000. I think that's what you're saying, right, Ms. Trixie? You're putting $20,000 down on $110,000 in 2016, paying it off over 3 years. With 425,000 when I found and bought from original owner. Oh, with 425,000 miles. Look, that's sort of what you're looking at, right? Sort of what you're looking at. A lot of mileage for, you know, a 2-year-old truck, but I'm guessing that was probably a team truck. You'll see some of that, right? You'll see some of that stuff on whether it's the night yards or the snided yards or those sort of things, right? I think it was, I've had a few guys tell me that a lot of those mega carriers trying to get those trucks off the road around 380 to 400,000, 420. All right, so. Traveloco has a 3-year and a 5-year deal, and you own your truck and trailer after it. Yep, they do. They do. How do brokers make their money? That was Kristen texting me, telling me that. So we've got her brother's bulldog. I've never been around a bulldog. When the thing just stands and breathes, it sounds like it's breathing to death. It's the most horrible sound. The funny thing is, his name is Lugnut. A cute dog. Funny name for that. What did you ask me? How do brokers make their money? So essentially, brokers make their money just by hedging it, right? So they're going to find a direct customer, and that direct customer is going to pay them whatever, $2,000 for that load. Whatever they pay you less that amount is going to be their profit. So if they convince you or some other driver to cover it for $1,500, they've just made $500, right? So they've got to pay all their costs, their lights, their bills for the real estate, all that stuff out of that. So that's sort of how they do that. Yeah, we're talking about a dog. So that's what I got. Let's see. Just imagine. Yes, no doubt. That's what I got. All right. I'm gonna take Lug Nut his bone. It's my job. So that's what I got out of here. If you guys have some questions or some comments, post them in the comments down below. Hope that helped. The first, like I said, if you're coming in late, the first 3 minutes of me showing the squirrels. The next 15 or 20 minutes is kind of talking and comparing and explaining the value of knowing both your cost per mile as well as your cost per day and how to sort of apply that to the spot market, if that makes sense. So I hope that helps. Guys, if you guys are making miles over the weekend, that's awesome. I sort of feel like we're sort of stealing whenever our guys are getting miles over the weekend because brokers aren't open. A lot of times we're not getting getting loads on the trailer or getting stuff off on the weekend. So I feel like anytime we can be making miles over the weekend, I feel like we're ahead of the game. I enjoy that. So if you guys are doing the very same thing, as always,